She stood at the counter of Terminal 4, exhausted, and dressed in a hoodie, holding a passport that had seen more countries than the gate agent had seen years. But when Loretta King approached the first-class desk, she wasn't greeted with champagne. She was told to wait in economy, and that the priority lane was for actual customers. 5 minutes later, the airline staff would realize they had just made the most expensive mistake in their company's history. Because Loretta didn't just argue, she pulled out a black card and bought every single seat in the cabin, leaving the airline's VIPs stranded and the gate agent trembling. This is the story of how one woman turned prejudice into a hostile takeover at 30,000 feet. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling glass of JFK's Terminal 4, turning the tarmac into a blurry watercolor of grey concrete and flashing orange lights. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and the low, humming anxiety of holiday travel. Loretta King adjusted the strap of her leather tote bag. It was a vintage piece, unassuming to the untrained eye, but crafted from hand-stitched Italian calfskin that cost more than most people's mortgage down payments. She pulled the hood of her charcoal cashmere sweater up slightly. She wasn't hiding. She was just tired. Bone tired. 72 hours ago, Loretta had been in Singapore, closing a volatile merger between two semiconductor giants. 48 hours ago, she had been in Dubai, putting out a PR fire for a subsidiary. Now all she wanted was to board Windsor Airways Flight 901 to London. Heathrow drink a glass of overly oaked Chardonnay and sleep until the wheels touched British soil. She navigated the crowded terminal, weaving through families arguing over boarding passes and backpackers sleeping on the floor. Her destination was the sanctuary of the Windsor Airways Royal Class check-in counter. It was cordoned off by velvet ropes and thick crimson carpets, a quiet island of luxury amidst the chaos of the main hall. There were 2 agents behind the marble counter. One was busy tagging the luggage of a family of 4 who looked like they were moving their entire household to Europe. The other agent was free. Her name tag read Beverly. She was a woman in her late 50s, with hair sprayed into a helmet of stiff blonde curls and lipstick the color of a stop sign. She was currently aggressively typing on her keyboard, her reading glasses perched precariously on the end of her nose. Loretta approached the counter. She didn't rush. She moved with the slow, deliberate cadence of someone who controlled their own time. She reached the marble ledge and waited. Beverly did not look up. Loretta cleared her throat softly. "Good evening." Beverly continued typing. She picked up a stapler, slammed it onto a document, and then finally, with a heavy, performative sigh, she raised her eyes. Her gaze didn't meet Loretta's face. Instead, it raked down Loretta's body, lingering on the comfortable grey joggers and the sneakers. It was the scan of judgment. A look Loretta knew well. It was the look that asked, "Do you belong here?" and answered no. "Economy check-in is kiosks only," Beverly said, her voice nasal and clipped. She pointed a manicured finger toward the chaotic main hall behind Loretta. "Zone 4 and 5 drop their bags at the end of the terminal. You're in the wrong place, sweetie." Loretta blinked, her expression unmoving. She placed her passport on the counter. "I'm not in economy. I'm on the 9:00 p.m. to London. I need to check one bag." Beverly didn't touch the passport. She laughed, a short, sharp bark of a sound. "This is the Royal Class line. First and business only. Look, I know the lines out there are long, but you can't just skip the queue because you're tired. We have paying customers waiting." Loretta felt that familiar heat rise in her chest, the ancient, weary frustration of having to prove she existed. She kept her voice level, the tone she used when a board member interrupted her during a presentation. "I'm a paying customer, Beverly. If you would simply scan the passport." I don't need to scan it to know you're lost. Beverly snapped her customer service mask, slipping entirely. This lane is for our elite members. People who pay $10,000 a seat. Now please step aside. You're blocking the carpet. Loretta looked around. There was no one behind her. The carpet was empty. I have a confirmation number, Loretta said, reaching for her phone. I am going to call security if you don't move, Beverly threatened, finally grabbing the passport, not to scan it, but to shove it back toward Loretta. We have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment. Go find a kiosk. It was the dismissal that stung the most. It wasn't just a refusal of service. It was an erasure. Beverly had decided, based on a hoodie and a complexion, that Loretta King, CEO of King Halloway Logistics, a woman who had rung the opening bell at the NYSE 3 months ago, was a nuisance to be swatted away. Loretta took her passport back. She didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She simply looked at Beverly with eyes that had stared down union bosses and hostile investors. You're making a mistake, Loretta said softly. The only mistake, Beverly retorted, turning back to her screen, was assuming you could hustle me. Move along. Loretta stepped back from the counter, but she didn't leave the area. She stood near the velvet rope, her heart hammering a slow, cold rhythm against her ribs. She took a deep breath, inhaling the recycled air, grounding herself. Don't engage, her father's voice echoed in her head. Don't give them the show they want. She pulled out her phone. She could call the airline's VIP concierge line. She could have Beverly fired before the plane even took off. But as she unlocked her screen, a commotion at the entrance of the Royal Class lanes caught her attention. A man was breezing through. He was tall, wearing a bespoke navy suit that screamed Savile Row, with a camel-colored overcoat draped over his arm. He was followed by a porter, pushing a cart stacked with Louis Vuitton hard-shell luggage. He was loud-talking into an earpiece, laughing with the booming confidence of a man who had never been told no in his life. Yeah, tell the hedge fund guys to wait. I'm flying out now. I'll sign the papers in Zurich, the man shouted into his headset. He approached the counter. Beverly's demeanor transformed instantly. The scowl vanished, replaced by a beaming, obsequious smile. She stood up straighter, smoothing her uniform. Mr. Calloway, she chirped, her voice jumping an octave. So good to see you again. We were worried you'd get caught in traffic. Benedict Calloway. Loretta recognized him instantly. The tabloids called him the bad boy of biotech. He was the CEO of Callaway Gene Tech, a rival firm that had been trying to undercut Loretta's logistics contracts for the last 2 years. He was arrogant, reckless, and known for his public meltdowns. Benedict pulled his earpiece out and leaned on the counter, winking at Beverly. Traffic is for poor people, Bev. Took the chopper to the helipad. Listen, I need a favor. I'm booked in 2A, but I want 1A. I hate sitting on the right side. Bad feng shui. Beverly tapped furiously. Oh, Mr. Calloway, 1A is currently assigned, but let me see. Yes, the passenger hasn't checked in yet. For you, I'll bump them. Consider it done. Loretta stiffened. 1A was her seat. She stepped back, up to the velvet rope, her voice projecting clearly this time. Excuse me. Benedict turned, looking at her with mild amusement, as if a piece of furniture had started talking. Beverly looked up, her face twisting into a mask of annoyance. I told you to leave, Beverly hissed. And I told you I'm on this flight, Loretta said, stepping over the velvet rope. She held up her phone, displaying the digital boarding pass. Loretta King, seat 1A, and I am not swapping seats for his feng shui. Benedict looked at Loretta, then at her hoodie, then back to Beverly. He let out a low, mocking chuckle. This is the passenger for 1A. You're kidding, right? Is this a charity ticket? Did you win a sweepstakes?" "Mr. Calloway, I am so sorry." Beverly apologized to him completely, ignoring Loretta's boarding pass. There must be a system glitch. Sometimes the staff travel passes get mixed up with the revenue tickets. She turned her glare on Loretta. "Ma'am, if you have a staff ticket or an upgrade voucher, you are standby. That means you wait until everyone boards. Mr. Calloway is a Global Services member. He takes priority." "I paid full fare," Loretta said, her voice turning to ice. $8,400, round trip." Benedict laughed again, shaking his head. "Look, sweetheart, take the hint. I've got work to do. Why don't you take the buyout I'll give you?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, peeling off $300 bills. "Here, $300. Go buy yourself a nice dinner at TGI Fridays and catch the morning flight. You'll be more comfortable there anyway." He tossed the bills. They fluttered through the air and landed on the red carpet at Loretta's feet. The terminal seemed to go silent. The family at the next counter stopped packing their bags. A security guard nearby looked over, but didn't move. Loretta looked down at the money. Then she looked at Benedict Calloway, whose smirk was wide and greasy. Then she looked at Beverly, who was smirking right along with him, holding Benedict's printed boarding pass, Seat 1A. "You gave him my seat," Loretta stated. "I optimized the cabin," Beverly corrected smugly. "I moved you to 42B. It's an aisle seat. You're lucky you're getting on at all with that attitude. Now pick up the gentleman's money and go to the gate, or I'm calling the police to have you removed for soliciting." Soliciting. Something inside Loretta snapped. It wasn't a hot, fiery snap. It was a cold, clean break. The part of her that believed in civil discourse, in following the rules, in being the better person, simply disconnected. She didn't pick up the money. She reached into her tote bag. "You're right," Loretta said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "I don't want seat 1A anymore." Benedict clapped his hands. "Smart girl. Run along now." Loretta pulled out a sleek, rectangular case. She opened it and retrieved a card. It wasn't plastic. It was anodized titanium. The American Express Centurion card. The black card. But this wasn't the standard one lawyers and dentists had. This one had a small diamond-encrusted chip issued only to individuals with a liquid net worth exceeding 9 figures. She placed the card on the marble counter with a heavy clink. "I don't want seat 1A, Loretta repeated, staring into Beverly's eyes. "I want to buy a ticket." Beverly rolled her eyes. "We are sold out, honey. Full flight." "No," Loretta said. "You're not. I check the inventory before I fly. There are 12 seats in the first-class cabin. You have 3 empty. You just bumped me, so that's 4. And Mr. Calloway hasn't boarded yet." She turned to Benedict. "You haven't boarded yet, have you, Ben?" Benedict frowned. "Who are you calling, Ben?" Loretta turned back to the computer. "I want to purchase the remaining inventory in the first-class cabin. All of it." Beverly stared at her. "Excuse me." "You heard me. I want every unoccupied seat in first class, and—" Loretta paused, a small, dangerous smile touching her lips. "I want to buy the upgrade rights for the entire business-class cabin." "You can't do that," Beverly stammered. "That would cost—" "Run the card," Loretta commanded. The authority in her voice was absolute. It was the voice that commanded fleets of ships and thousands of employees. "Run it now, or I call Jonathan Sterling, the VP of Operations for Windsor Airways. We had lunch last Tuesday. I have his personal cell number." Beverly's face went pale. The name drop hit its mark. She looked at the card, then at the computer. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the titanium card. I have to check availability," Beverly whispered, her arrogance evaporating. "Do it," Loretta said. Hey, wait a minute, Benedict interjected, stepping closer. You can't just buy seats to keep them empty. I need 1A. You have a ticket for 2A, Mr. Calloway. Loretta said, not looking at him. Unless, she looked at Beverly, unless you gave his seat away already. Beverly swallowed hard. I haven't released 2A yet. Good, Loretta said. Then he sits in 2A. I'll take 1A, 1F, 2F, 3A, 3F, and 4A. And I'm booking them as extra seat, comfort. It's in your policy manual. Section 4, paragraph 2. A passenger may purchase adjacent seats for personal comfort. Beverly typed. The machine beeped. She swiped the card. The terminal held its breath. Approved. The printer whirred to life, spitting out boarding pass after boarding pass. A long serpentine stream of paper. Loretta took the stack. She took her black card back. Actually, Loretta said, looking at the pile of tickets, I've changed my mind about one thing. What? Beverly asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Calloway, Loretta said, turning to the man who was now looking at her with a mix of confusion and rage. You mentioned traffic is for poor people. I agree. And crowded cabins are for people who don't own the logistics company that supplies Windsor Airways with their jet fuel. Benedict's eyes went wide. King, you're Loretta King. I am, she said. She turned back to Beverly. Cancel his ticket. What? Beverly shrieked. I can't. I just bought the last remaining seat in first. Loretta lied smoothly, knowing she controlled the inventory now. And I'm buying his seat too. I'll pay double the fare, right now. Get him off the manifest. You can't kick me off, Benedict roared. I have a contract. And I have the plane, Loretta said calmly. She leaned in close to Beverly. If he is in that first-class cabin when I board, I will pull my company's fuel contract with Windsor by morning. That's a $40 million loss. Do you want to be the one to explain to Jonathan Sterling why Windsor Airways lost their fuel supplier because you didn't like my hoodie? Beverly looked like she was going to be sick. She looked at Benedict, then at the computer screen where the transaction had just cleared for over $60,000 worth of seats. Mr. Calloway, Beverly squeaked. I'm afraid there's been an overbooking issue. You have got to be kidding me, Benedict screamed. We can accommodate you in Economy Plus, Beverly offered weakly. Row 22. Loretta picked up her stack of boarding passes. She didn't look back at Benedict. She looked at the $300 still lying on the floor. You might want to pick that up, Ben, Loretta said, as she walked toward the security checkpoint. You'll need it for the snacks in row 22. I hear they charge for pretzels back there. She walked away, the velvet rope parting for her, leaving a stunned billionaire and a terrified gate agent in her wake. But Loretta knew this wasn't over. The flight was 7 hours long, and at 35,000 feet, there was nowhere to hide. The walk from the check-in counter to gate B24 was usually a blur for Loretta, a necessary friction between where she was and where she needed to be. But tonight, the air in the terminal felt different. It was charged with the static electricity of gossip. News travels fast in airports, faster than the aircraft themselves. By the time Loretta reached the security checkpoint, she noticed the sidelong glances from the TSA agents. Beverly had clearly been on the radio. The story of the crazy woman who bought the cabin was circulating. Loretta placed her tote bag in the bin. She removed her shoes, not because she had to, she had pre-check, but because she wanted to feel the cold floor beneath her feet, a reminder to stay grounded. As she waited for her bag to slide through the X-ray, she checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her assistant in New York. 1 text from Jonathan Sterling, the Windsor VP she had name-dropped. Loretta hearing weird chatter from JFK ground ops. Everything okay? Beverly says there's a situation with the manifest. Loretta typed back a single line, handling a hostile takeover. Standard procedure. Will update from London. She grabbed her bag and headed for the gate. Gate B24 was a zoo. The flight was fully booked, and the holding area was a sea of exhausted travelers, crying toddlers and business people, anxiously charging their laptops at the few working power outlets. And there, standing right at the podium, was Benedict Calloway. He hadn't gone to the back of the line. Of course he hadn't. He was standing next to the boarding door, leaning over the desk of the gate agent, a young man named Kevin, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Beverly had evidently followed them from the check-in desk to the gate to manage the situation, or perhaps to witness the fallout. She stood next to Kevin, whispering furiously and pointing at her computer screen. Benedict was loud. He was performing for the crowd. It's discrimination, plain and simple, Benedict shouted, gesturing to the weary passengers in Zone 1. I am a platinum flyer. I have flown 100,000 miles with this airline this year, and they are telling me my seat is gone. That I have to sit in the back because of a clerical error. A few passengers grumbled in sympathy. That's not right, a woman in a business suit muttered. Benedict, emboldened, turned to the crowd. They want to bump me for an employee. Can you believe that they are prioritizing their own staff over paying customers? He was spinning a narrative. He was good at this. It was how he ran his company, loud, brash, and loosely tethered to the truth. Loretta stopped at the edge of the seating area. She watched him for a moment. She could intervene. She could correct him. But she knew that in the court of public opinion, a black woman in a hoodie arguing with a white man in a bespoke suit rarely won, regardless of the facts. So she didn't argue. She waited. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin's voice wavered over the intercom. We are ready to begin boarding for Windsor Airways Flight 901 to London Heathrow. We would like to invite our Royal Class passengers to board at this time. Benedict smirked. He grabbed his carry-on and stepped directly to the scanner blocking the path. He slapped his boarding pass, the one Beverly had originally printed for him, onto the reader. Beep, 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 a harsh red tone. Sir, Kevin said, sweating, that boarding pass is invalid. It's the only one I have, Benedict snapped. Override it. I can't, Kevin said. The system shows you in 22B. You need to scan the new pass. I am not sitting in 22B, Benedict yelled, slamming his hand on the podium. The crowd went silent. I am boarding this plane, and I am sitting in the seat I paid for. If you don't let me through, I will sue this airline into bankruptcy. Mr. Calloway, please, Beverly hissed, trying to de-escalate the monster she had fed. You're holding up the line. I am the line. Loretta chose that moment to move. She walked through the crowd. It wasn't a pushy walk. It was the hydrodynamic flow of a shark moving through water. People instinctively parted. She walked right up to the podium, standing next to the fuming Benedict. She didn't look at him. She looked at Kevin. Loretta King, she said calmly. Boarding all seats in Zone 1. She held her phone over the scanner. Beep, green light, beep, green light, beep, green light. She scanned it 12 times. The machine chirped a happy rhythmic melody of acceptance. Benedict stared at the scanner, his mouth slightly open. The passengers behind them craned their necks to see what was happening. She has 12 boarding passes, someone whispered. Loretta looked at Kevin. I believe I'm cleared to board. Yes, Ms. King. Kevin said, his eyes wide. Enjoy your flight. Loretta stepped into the jet bridge. Hey! Benedict shouted, lunging forward. He grabbed the shoulder of her hoodie. The contact was brief, but it was electric. Loretta stopped. She didn't turn around fast. She turned slowly. She looked at his hand on her shoulder, then up at his face. Her expression was devoid of fear. It was the look of a predator being touched by prey. "Remove your hand," she said. Her voice was low, but it carried in the acoustic tunnel of the jet bridge. "You think this is funny?" Benedict snarled, though he released her. "You think you can just buy your way out of reality. You're a nobody. I'm going to make sure you never work in this industry again." Loretta smoothed her hoodie where he had touched it, as if wiping away dirt. "Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice projecting back to the gate agent and the waiting crowd. "You are delaying my flight, and since I currently own the cabin you're trying to break into, you are technically trespassing. If you touch me again, I won't call the police. I'll call the FAA and report a physical assault on a passenger. That's a federal no-fly list violation. Do you want to take the bus to London for the rest of your life?" Benedict froze. The threat of the no-fly list was the one thing that could actually hurt him. He backed down his face, a mottled red. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "I doubt it," Loretta said. She turned and walked down the long, lonely tunnel of the jet bridge. Behind her, she heard the scanner beep, a harsh, rejecting red, again followed by Kevin's exhausted voice. "Sir, I need you to step aside. We are boarding Zone 2. Loretta smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all night. Stepping onto the plane was like entering a different dimension. The transition from the fluorescent frantic terminal to the soft golden lighting of the Royal Class cabin was jarring. The cabin was configured in a 1-2-1 layout with 12 enclosed suites. It was designed to feel exclusive, but tonight it looked like a mausoleum. A flight attendant named Jessica stood at the door holding a tray of hot towels. She was young with a kind face that currently held an expression of profound confusion. She looked at the manifest in her hand, then at Loretta, then down the empty jet bridge. "Good evening, Mum," Jessica said, her voice hesitant. "Welcome aboard. May I ask where the rest of your party is? We want to make sure we don't close the doors too early." Loretta stepped into the cabin and inhaled the scent of leather and expensive sanitizer. "There is no party, Jessica. Just me." Jessica blinked. "I'm sorry, the manifest shows 12 passengers checked in, all under the name King." "That's correct," Loretta said, walking to seat 1A. She dropped her tote bag onto the seat. Then she walked to 1F and placed her coat. She walked to 2A and placed her scarf. "I bought them all," Loretta explained, turning back to the stunned flight attendant. "I had a disagreement with the gate staff regarding my right to exist in this space. I decided to solve the overcrowding problem." Jessica's mouth formed a perfect O. A senior flight attendant, a man named Robert, emerged from the galley. He had clearly heard the explanation. He looked at Loretta with a sparkle in his eye. He had been flying for 20 years. He had seen drunks, divas, and drug smugglers. But this was new. "So," Robert said, stepping forward with a silver tray of champagne, "what you're saying is we have a 1-to-2 crew-to-passenger ratio tonight." "It appears so," Loretta said, and Robert continued, gesturing to the empty suites. "We have 11 extra meals, 12 amenity kits, and approximately 4 bottles of Dom Perignon per person." "I don't drink that much," Loretta said, taking a flute from his tray. "But I wouldn't say no to peace and quiet." "Miss King," Robert said, bowing dramatically, "you are my favorite passenger of all time. Welcome to the Royal Suite. Consider this cabin your living room." Loretta finally relaxed. She sank into the plush leather of 1A. She watched as the boarding door remained open for the stream of economy passengers. They had to walk past the first-class cabin to get to the aisles. The parade began. People shuffled past, dragging carry-ons that were too big, looking tired and cramped. As they passed the open suites of first class, their reactions were a study in human psychology. Most looked confused. They saw the empty seats and then looked at Loretta, the lone figure sipping champagne in a hoodie. "Is it empty?" a teenager asked his mum. "Must be broken," the mum whispered back. "Or maybe she's a diplomat." Then came the Zone 4 passengers, and finally the stragglers. Loretta watched the door like a hawk. She was waiting for him, and then he appeared. Benedict Calloway. He had lost his jacket. His tie was loosened. He was sweating. He was carrying his Louis Vuitton bags himself because the porter service didn't extend to row 22. He looked furious, humiliated, and dangerous. When he stepped onto the plane, Robert, the flight attendant, blocked the aisle slightly, checking his boarding pass. "Seat 22B, sir. Down the aisle past the curtain. Second cabin, halfway back. Middle seat." Benedict looked at Robert. Then he looked at the empty cabin. He saw the seats his seat 2A occupied only by Loretta's scarf. He locked eyes with Loretta. She raised her champagne glass in a silent toast. Benedict's face turned a shade of purple that looked medically concerning. He opened his mouth to scream, to make a scene, to do something that would force the pilot to turn the plane around. "Keep moving, sir," Robert said, his voice firm. "You're blocking the flow." Benedict ground his teeth. He knew he was beaten. For now. He lugged his heavy bag down the aisle, bumping into the seats as he went. As he passed Loretta, he leaned in his voice a low hiss. "Enjoy the champagne, King. But watch your back. It's a long flight and accidents happen." "Is that a threat?" Loretta asked calmly. "It's a forecast," Benedict spat. He disappeared behind the heavy navy blue curtain that separated the worlds. The doors closed. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed. The silence in the first-class cabin was absolute. There were no crying babies, no coughing neighbors, no clinking of silverware. Just the low hum of the engines spooling up. Robert came by to refill her glass. "We secured the curtain, Miss King. No one comes up here unless you invite them." "Thank you, Robert," she said. As the plane taxied to the runway, Loretta reclined her seat. She should have been happy. She had won. She had exerted power in a way that felt biblical. But as the G-force pushed her back into the seat during takeoff, a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. Benedict's threat hadn't sounded like standard corporate bluster. Accidents happen. Once they reached cruising altitude, Loretta didn't sleep. She didn't watch a movie. She pulled out her laptop. She connected to the exorbitant in-flight Wi-Fi. She needed to know why Benedict Calloway, a man who usually flew private or took helicopters, was so desperate to get to London on this specific flight that he tried to bribe a woman for her seat. She pulled up the terminal for the London Stock Exchange. She pulled up the news feeds for Calloway Gene-Tech. Nothing. The stock was stable. No press releases. She dug deeper. She logged into her Bloomberg terminal. She looked at the transaction logs for his company. And then she saw it. A filing time stamped for tomorrow morning, 8:00 a.m. London time. A board meeting. A vote on a merger with a Russian pharmaceutical conglomerate, a company currently under heavy sanctions. If the vote went through, Calloway Gene-Tech would bypass the sanctions, flooding the market with unregulated opioids. It was illegal, immoral, and incredibly profitable. But the bylaws of his company were specific. The CEO had to be present in person to cast the tie-breaking vote if the board was split. And the board was split. That's why he was here. That's why he was desperate. If he missed this meeting, the deal died, and his company, which Loretta could see was leveraged to the hilt, would collapse. Loretta stared at the screen. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. She was the only thing standing between a desperate man and $1 billion illegal drug deal, and he was sitting 50 feet behind her, stewing in the dark. She looked up as the curtain to the galley twitched. She expected Robert, but it wasn't Robert. The curtain parted slowly. Benedict stood there. He wasn't holding a weapon, but he was holding something else. A small silver canister. A vape, no. He stepped into the first-class cabin. The flight attendants were in the galley preparing dinner. They didn't see him yet. "You're a smart woman, Loretta." Benedict said, his voice eerily calm now. He walked toward her seat. "I saw you on your laptop. You're digging." "Go back to your seat, Benedict," Loretta said, closing her laptop but not moving. "I can't do that," he said. He looked around the empty cabin. "You know the problem with buying all the seats is that there are no witnesses." "Robert," Loretta called out sharp and loud. Benedict lunged, not to hit her, but to grab the laptop. "I need that meeting, Loretta." "Questo!" He shouted, the veneer of civilization cracking completely. "I need to be in London." He grabbed the edge of her laptop. She held on. They wrestled for it, a bizarre, silent struggle in the luxury cabin. "Let go!" she yelled. "Mr. Calloway!" Robert's voice boomed from the galley. Robert and Jessica rushed out. Robert, a burly man who did CrossFit on his days off, didn't hesitate. He tackled Benedict, pulling him away from Loretta. Benedict flailed, knocking over the champagne bottle. It shattered on the floor. "Get off me, I'm a VIP!" Benedict screamed as Robert pinned him against the bulkhead. "You are a security threat," Robert yelled. "Jessica, get the restraints, the plastic cuffs now." Benedict stopped struggling. He looked at Loretta, his chest heaving. He started to laugh, a dry, manic laugh. "You think you've won," he wheezed. "You think arresting me helps. If I don't make that meeting, I lose everything. And if I lose everything, I have nothing left to lose." He looked at the cockpit door. "The pilot," Benedict whispered. "I know the pilot. Captain Miller. He's on my payroll. Why do you think he held the gate for me?" Loretta's blood ran cold. "Captain Miller," Benedict shouted at the reinforced cockpit door. "Plan B Miller. Turn it around or dump the fuel. I'm not going to jail in London." The cabin went silent. They all looked at the cockpit door. Nothing happened for a second. Then, the fasten seatbelt sign flickered. The plane banked sharply to the left. Violently so. Loretta was thrown against the side of her suite. Robert lost his grip on Benedict. The plane wasn't flying to London anymore. It was descending. "He's actually doing it!" Benedict cackled, scrambling up from the floor. "If I can't go to London, nobody goes." Loretta looked at the map on her screen. They were over the Atlantic, miles from anywhere. This wasn't a hostile takeover anymore. It was a hijacking, the sensation of a Boeing 777 descending rapidly is not like a roller coaster. It is heavier. It is the feeling of gravity, doubling of the blood rushing from your head to your feet, of the very air in the cabin becoming thick and oppressive. In the first-class cabin, the chaos was absolute. The half-empty champagne bottle rolled across the floor, foaming onto the expensive carpet. Robert, the flight attendant, was thrown off balance, his grip on Benedict slipping. Benedict, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, scrambled away, grabbing onto the side of seat 2A to hoist himself up. "He's listening to me!" Benedict screamed, his eyes wild, looking at the ceiling as if the pilot were God himself. "I told you I own this bird. If I don't get to London, we're going into the ocean." Loretta gripped the armrests of her suite, her knuckles white. She looked at the flight map screen. They were entering a steep turn, banking southwest, away from London, away from New York, toward the icy blackness of the North Atlantic. "Jessica," Loretta shouted over the roar of the engines. "The interphone call the cockpit." Jessica, the younger flight attendant, was strapped into her jump seat, hyperventilating. She unbuckled, stumbling toward the wall-mounted phone. She punched the code. Captain, what is happening? We have a situation in the cabin," Jessica yelled into the receiver. She listened for a second, her face draining of all color. She looked at Loretta, terror in her eyes. He says he's declaring a pan emergency. Diversion due to critical operational failure. That's code." Benedict laughed, wiping blood from a cut on his lip. "That's code for I'm doing what I was paid to do. We're landing in Bermuda, or maybe the Azores, somewhere I can get a charter jet." "You can't stop money, Loretta." Loretta unbuckled her seatbelt. The plane was shaking violently as it cut through the cloud layer. "Sit down, Miss King," Robert yelled. Loretta ignored him. She crawled across the aisle to where Benedict stood. He looked down at her, sneering. He raised his foot to kick her. But Loretta wasn't reaching for him. She was reaching for the floor, specifically for the panel at the base of the suite wall, the maintenance access panel for the in-flight entertainment system. She ripped the magnetic cover off. Underneath was a hard-line Ethernet port used by technicians. "What are you doing?" Benedict scoffed. "Checking your email." Loretta didn't answer. She pulled a heavy-duty data cable from her laptop bag. She plugged one end into the port and the other into her encrypted tough book. "You think the pilot is your friend, Ben?" Loretta yelled over the turbulence. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Let's see." She wasn't hacking the plane that was Hollywood nonsense. She was accessing the logistics manifest. As the owner of King Halloway, her company's software tracked the fuel efficiency and cargo loads of half the fleets in the sky, including Windsor Airways. She had a back-end super user key. She brought up the real-time telemetry of Flight 901. "He's not diverting to Bermuda," Loretta announced, her voice cutting through the noise. She looked up at Benedict. "And he's not helping you." Benedict froze. "What?" "Look at the fuel flow," Loretta said, turning the screen so he could see the jagged red lines. "He's dumping fuel. Massive dump. He's lightening the load for an emergency landing. But look at the vector." She pointed to the map. "He's heading for Gander, Newfoundland, Canada." Benedict blinked. "Canada? No." "No," I told him. "Gander is where planes go when they have a security threat that the pilot is terrified of," Loretta said, standing up. The plane was leveling off now, the descent becoming smoother. "Captain Miller isn't your accomplice anymore, Benedict. He's saving his own skin. He took your bribe, realized you were a lunatic who screams about hijackings, and decided to hand you over to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police rather than risk a transatlantic crossing with a maniac on board." Benedict's face fell. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by the hollow look of a man watching his life disintegrate. "No," he whispered. "If I land in Canada, the extradition treaties, the delay, the merger vote is in 8 hours. Loretta checked her watch. "You'll be in a holding cell in Newfoundland in 40 minutes. You're going to miss the meeting, Ben." "I can't miss it," Benedict shrieked. He lunged for the cockpit door again. "Miller, open this door." Robert was ready this time. He tackled Benedict from behind, driving him into the carpet. He pulled the plastic zip tie restraints from his pocket. Zip. Benedict Calloway's hands were bound behind his back. He lay face down on the first-class carpet, surrounded by spilled champagne and the shattered remains of his dignity. The PA system clicked on. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot's voice crackled. It sounded strained, shaky. "This is Captain Miller. We have a mechanical indication that requires us to divert to Gander International Airport. We will be on the ground in 20 minutes. Please prepare for landing." Loretta looked down at Benedict. He was sobbing, not tears of remorse, but the angry, pathetic tears of a spoiled child who had finally been told no. "You're finished," Loretta said softly. She sat back in seat 1A. She picked up her glass, which miraculously still had a sip of champagne in it. She drank it. It was warm, but it tasted like victory. Gander, Newfoundland is a place of stark, brutal beauty. In the winter, the wind howls off the North Atlantic with enough force to strip paint from a car. When Flight 901 touched down, it didn't taxi to a gate. It stopped on the remote tarmac, surrounded by snowbanks that glowed orange under the floodlights of a dozen police cruisers. The engines whined down. The silence that followed was heavy. Loretta looked out the window. She saw the flashing red and blue lights reflecting on the snow. She saw the stairs being rolled up to the plane, and she saw the distinct wide-brimmed hats of the RCMP officers walking up the steps. The cabin door opened. A blast of freezing air rushed in, mixing with the warm, stale air of the airplane. 2 officers entered. They were big men, polite but imposing. "We have a report of a disturbance," one officer said, his breath misting in the air. Robert stepped forward. He looked exhausted, his uniform rumpled. "The individual is restrained in row 1. He assaulted a passenger, attempted to breach the cockpit, and made threats regarding the safety of the aircraft." The officers looked at Benedict, who was still face down on the floor, muttering to himself. They hoisted him up. Benedict looked wild. His hair was standing on end, his suit was stained, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Do you know who I am?" Benedict spat at the officers. "I am Benedict Calloway. I demand a phone. I demand a lawyer. I am an American citizen." "You're on Canadian soil now, sir," the officer said calmly. "And under the Aeronautics Act, you're under arrest for endangering the safety of an aircraft. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you use it." They began to drag him toward the door. As he passed Loretta's seat, Benedict dug his heels in. He stopped breathing heavily, looking at her. "You did this," he hissed. "You planned this. You baited me." Loretta didn't look up from her phone. She was typing a message to her legal team. "I just wanted to fly to London, Ben. You're the one who couldn't handle sitting in row 22. I will destroy you," he screamed as the officers shoved him through the door. "I will buy your company and burn it to the ground." His voice faded as he was led down the stairs into the biting wind. Loretta stood up. She walked to the door and watched. She saw them push Benedict into the back of a squad car. She saw him banging his head against the window. She turned to Beverly, the gate agent who had started it all. Beverly had been hiding in the galley for the last 2 hours, terrified. Now she was standing near the cockpit, trembling. Loretta walked up to her. Beverly flinched. "The police will want statements," Loretta said. "I suggest you tell the truth, Beverly, about the bribery, about the seat swapping, about everything." I was just following procedure." Beverly stammered, tears streaming down her face. "He's a Platinum member. I didn't know." "You knew," Loretta said. "You just thought I didn't matter." Loretta pulled a business card from her pocket and tucked it into Beverly's breast pocket. "When Windsor Airways fires you, and they will don't call me for a reference." 3 months later, the headline on the Wall Street Journal was in bold black ink. "Calloway Crash Biotech Giant declares bankruptcy amidst fraud scandal." Loretta sat in her office in Manhattan, the city skyline sprawling out behind her. It was a crisp spring morning. On her desk sat a cup of coffee and a thick legal binder. The fallout had been swift and brutal. Benedict Calloway never made the meeting in London, while he was sitting in a Canadian jail cell, unable to post bail due to being a flight risk. The board meeting commenced. Without his tie-breaking vote, the loyal board members panicked. The merger with the Russian conglomerate fell through. The news of his arrest broke the next morning. TMZ had obtained video footage from a passenger in economy, a grainy clip of Benedict being dragged off the plane screaming. It went viral instantly. Then came the investigations. The SEC looked into the failed merger. The FAA launched an inquiry into Captain Miller, who was immediately suspended and later testified against Benedict to save his pension. The frantic text messages Benedict had sent to his broker right before the flight were subpoenaed. Insider trading. Conspiracy. Callaway Genetec's stock plummeted from $140 a share to $4.50 in a week. The company was liquidated, and the assets Loretta opened the binder on her desk. It was the closing document for the acquisition. Purchaser King, Halloway Logistics. Assets acquired, Callaway GeneTech Warehousing, Division and Global Fleet. Price 0.012 on the dollar. Loretta had bought his company's infrastructure for pennies. She didn't want the biotech research. She wanted their trucks, their hangars, and their shipping routes. She had effectively eaten her rival. Her intercom buzzed. "Ms. King," her assistant said. "The camera crew is here. They're ready for the interview." "Send them in." The door opened. A crew from 60 Minutes walked in, followed by the legendary journalist Lesley Stahl, the real name, the reliability anchor. Lesley sat down opposite Loretta, adjusting her notes. The cameras rolled. "Loretta," Lesley began, her voice iconic and sharp. "People are calling this the billion-dollar flight. You walked into JFK, an exhausted traveler, and you walked out having effectively dismantled a corrupt empire. When he told you to wait in economy, did you have any idea it would end like this?" Loretta smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had played the long game and won. "Lesley," Loretta said, leaning forward. "My father used to tell me that prejudice is an expensive luxury. It blinds you. Benedict Callaway saw a black woman in a hoodie and assumed I was powerless. He was so focused on putting me in my place, he forgot to check if I owned the place." "And the gate agent?" Lesley asked. "Beverly." "Windsor Airways terminated her employment the next day," Loretta said. "But I heard she's working now." "Oh, where?" "At the airport," Loretta said. "At the pretzel stand in Terminal 4. I stopped by yesterday. I bought a pretzel. She waited on me." "Did she say anything?" "She asked if I wanted mustard," Loretta said. "And I told her, no thanks. I'm flying first class. They have better snacks." Lesley Stahl laughed. Loretta looked into the camera lens. Her eyes were hard, bright, and undeniable. "The morale isn't that money buys respect," Loretta said. "The morale is that you never know who you're talking to. So you better treat everyone like they're the CEO, because one day they might just buy your seat." And that is how Loretta King turned a moment of disrespect into a legendary corporate takeover. It's a brutal reminder that karma doesn't always wait for the next life. Sometimes it hits you at 30,000 feet with a titanium black card. Benedict Callaway lost his company, his freedom and his dignity, because he couldn't see past his own bias. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story about underdogs taking over the world. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Loretta? Would you have bought the seats or handled it differently? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.